A gracious good day. This is Coach T with our recap video for our first decision in the Emerald universe. This is decision one recap. We have red, blue, and yellow teams, and this is our first shot at doing the decision sliders and making our first investments in the Mega Learning Sim. The results are in. And they're interesting and mixed as usual because this is just kind of there was no feedback on customers and no competitive information yet. In this recap, you'll see all of the financials because we're publicly traded are going to be shared, and I'm going to share a lot of graphics. And the importance for these graphics are adaptability. That's really the lesson of the sim in general, is that how are you going to adapt to the conditions? The gas price index on the landing page, is it going up or down, and how does that affect the image line? The choices you're making, how do you need to adapt to what happened given those choices? And in general, kind of what are the graphics and the results of the six major inventories, being CO2 revenue, ROCE or ROS, retained earnings, morale, and the value of your shares. So without further ado, we're going to share the screen. And in the future, you can use these in the next several weeks for all your reports, your final papers, everything else that's got anything to do with deliverables for the course. You can use these visuals and you'll get a recap with every decision so you can see your progress, how you go forward. And let's share the screen. Yeah, okay, hopefully you can see this, which is our standings, our rankings. If you look at the graphics, it looks like red is first, yellow is second, and blue is third. And that is indeed true. However, red and blue are tied neck and neck in the indicators. And the worst score you can possibly get would be third place in all six indicators, which would be 18 points. You can see that blue team got 17 points. So they're close to number three or the third team in all three, but we'll see there's places where, especially in image, where blue did really well. And then number one, if you were number one in all six, you'd have a score of six. There's a score of nine here. So they were robbed in revenue by blue team at number two and by yellow team at number one. And you'll see what also happened in terms of employee morale, where yellow took morale away from red team. And the artifact of this and the the information behind it, the sort of comprehensive of what's going on with it, is that employee morale is tied a lot to revenue. So if you're doing well in revenue, your employees are happy. Also, the HR investment. So you'll see later on that in the investment side that Yellow did make a significant investment, maybe too big of an investment, but they also didn't blow the revenue. If you blow your revenue, your morale is going to go way down. You become last like Blue Team did because of the revenue side of it. So again, the standings aren't too serious in the first decision because they're going to change a lot in the next three decisions. And it is easy to crash and burn and be number three in four of them and still be number one in five and win the sim at the end because there are things in the fifth decisions that really have a lot of adaptability compared to what you've done with your inventory. And let's jump over to, all right, here's kind of the results, the financial results of the whole sim for decision one for Emerald Universe. And these recaps, by the way, I do for every decision for every team. And I keep 3 to 4 of them up on YouTube at Model Sim Professor. And anytime you can watch, I try to keep these to a half hour, just to give you the graphics that you can use in your final paper and reports and all the other things that are due. Just take these graphics, you don't have to redo them, and just put them into your papers and reports, and that saves you a lot of time because you earn these graphics with all your decisions. So you can watch other recaps, like you could have watched the recap for the previous team for the first one and seen that what always happens, almost always, is that everyone crashes and burns in low cost and eco. I've told this to all the teams. I tell it every time is be careful with those two lines because they're not growth. They're question marks, mysteries. They're the future. Low cost is might come into its own by the third or fourth decision. Eco takes a long investment, and you got to really match supply and demand because it's very related to the gas price index. Yes, emissions are good, but it's not easy in EBIT or in ROCE, in return on capital employed. I have my ROCE hat on because it's always, kind of the key indicator. You can look at things like accumulated returns, earnings, which is sort of the whole point of the sim, and EBIT, of course, which is this whole chart. And you have to do that with every decision. You have to go back and say, what will this do to our EBIT? And that is what really gives you success in this sim, is to keep checking back on how is every extra dollar of revenue causing me a loss? That's what happened to Blue Team in low cost. And the better you do, the more revenues you get, the higher up you are, the more money you lose. So you have to be careful that you're making the right amount of inventory, selling it, and you're producing the right amount, but you're also selling that inventory. And we'll look at that in a second. And the secret sauce is there's tons of indicators I'll show you, but lost orders over inventory is really how are you matching supply and demand? And are you losing money because you're really marketed well, but you can't make it. You're not making it, so you're getting lots of orders, but no deliveries or sales because you're running out of inventory. You're losing those issues. You're not producing enough. So, and it's hard in these two lines because you got to be very careful with price. But the good news is, except for yellow here, that these two lines are easy money. If you invest in family and you invest in image, and you can actually shut lines down. Now, you can't shut a line down by not moving the sliders. You're inheriting a business here. So you've got to look more careful, a few levels down if you're kind of backing off on a line. I'm not telling you to do that. Some people manage all four in the portfolio, do fantastic, and win with great, great Rosean numbers at the end. But you can also say in the beginning, and to back off on a little bit, to back off, you have to make sure what's starting in the ending inventories, what are you doing with the plant? And if you're backing off on it, you can't just not play the depreciation and let the plant fall apart. You'll see this indicator that is, sort of the cost of quality. When you look at the cost of non-quality, and the reason of the cost of non-quality, which you'll see, which is up here, um, why it's costing you is that where the quality's not there and you're not making enough and you don't have the features, then to repair it, it's got to come back to the factory. And that hits your productivity. And now that's unusual. Usually, a lot of things get fixed at the dealership, but this is not that kind of model. This is a model where it affects the factory to have repairs and have non-quality. That's where it gets dinged. So again, the question is why what is driving this? Um, why did everyone do really well in family, and why did most of you do okay in image? And I've had teams that just said we're going to go the Ferrari all the way, we're backing up and everything else, and we're just going to make image our thing and do really well. But that's not always true because there could be two or three people doing that. It's all either we all hang loose together, or we all hang separately. So take a screenshot of this and also all the rest of them we're doing. I'll show you some of the white lines, how are we following them, and then LOI, and that'll be it. But these are numbers you can kind of look at and go over and say, how am I standing relative to the other teams and what happened there? Yeah, they had better revenue in yellow and they spent a ton of money on HR in yellow. And yet, and they literally when you look at when you look at the standings, yellow and red really are tied for first because yellow got 10 and red got 9, in terms of their index numbers of the 6 indicators where we just saw number 1, number 2, number 3. You can take a screenshot of that. And if you haven't done that, I can show you. Let's go back to that. Maybe I didn't say that soon enough. Let me go back down here and find. Yeah, so you can see that because of Yellow's investment in growing the top line and their big investment in morale, they're number one in both of those. So their strategy worked. I'm not saying that didn't work, but 500 is a lot. They could have made it maybe with 250 to 3, but still, that was a good investment in HR and quality if we want morale. And also, better lucky than good or else fantastically smart. The better you do in revenue, even if you're losing money and you're going to, kind of you're going to not do as well. You're not going to crash and burn, but you're not going to do as well. because your your investment in revenue isn't necessarily matching which lines you picked in terms of the inventory that you're building. But no, hats off to both red and yellow. They did fantastic, did really good. Blue stumbled a little bit. They took the revenue. I think they took revenue. Yeah, they took the revenue away, number one spot away from red team, and all the rest, they were in last place. But still, when you look at their numbers, and you look back at the chart, then Blue also blew away Image. They did much better than the other two teams in Image, and that's kind of what saved them. And you're saying, well, what do you mean by, by save them? Um, if you kind of crashed and burned, you were number three, and you got destroyed in low cost, which Blue Team did, compared to what happened with Image. Obviously, this kind of offset the loss they had there by doing so well in Image. Red did okay too, and yellow kind of got in a little bit of got in a little bit of trouble. But the you can see how that affected the standings very clearly, because yellow, even though they didn't do great here, they still did good in family, at least even with red. And then well, you'll see lost orders over inventory. Their EBIT wasn't as bad because of matching supply and demand. And we'll jump to that and see that in a second, and how you do that and how you make those decisions. So let's go over to lost orders now. All right, let's start with asking the question. This is low cost. You can see the low cost family eco and image here. This is just orders, but we're going to go over to LOI. These are a lot of things I can show you. The volume, why are you getting less or more orders? What's driving your costs and your unit costs? And then we've already seen Rosé, but this is the key right now and right here to get right. Lost orders over inventory, and I'll show you how this works. When you have any kind of an indexed chart, it's the reverse of what you're trying to show because of the way you set up the index. So if it's lost orders divided by inventory, the lost orders on the bottom, the divisor inventory is on the top. So the zero line is like a straight line across here. The closer you get in the next four decisions to that zero line consistently, it means you have driven revenue up and you've met that demand, that inventory, that new inventory and the old inventory with production. And that's supply versus demand. So you're driving the demand up and the supply is doing great. The more you go above those zero line, the more you're getting inventory build up, which means you need to market and sell those more. You're producing them and the inventory is going up. The more that you go to below the zero line, those are your lost orders. It means you're doing great in revenue and sales, but you're not making enough. So you're losing all those orders. They're not being delivered because you're not making enough. So on the supply side, so this is your demand, this is your supply, and this is you can see that we know blue crashed and burned in EBIT in low cost, even though they won and did great in image. So you can look at this and say, wow, what a driver this balance between supply and demand is in terms of EBIT. And that's because of CapEx. CapEx affects cash and EBIT and profit per unit. For every unit that you get in revenue, is it adding or taking away from the bottom line? And that is obviously how you match your supply and demand, as well as how you make the investments that match what the customers want. Now, the universe grows and changes and adapts to what the teams do. So if you've seen one, you've seen one. There's no way to game the sim because it adapts to what you do, and it requires adaptation when you do it to what has happened as a result of what all three teams did. So now let's look at family. This is again lost over inventory. Take a screenshot. You're going to use this every time and see how it changes through all five decisions. And we learn a ton from looking at that, of how it affected all the gears and wheels. We look at family, and what happened here. What happened here to yellow versus, now these two are blue and red in family are, you can see all three teams. Yellow here built a lot of inventory up in family, but didn't do bad. None of the three teams did real bad in family because family is very forgiving, just like image is. It's rare, even though yellow kind of crashed in image, which is unusual, they still did good in family. But you can see the other two teams did in family did really well. These are superimposed actually, right on matching supply and demand. So yellow's building a lot of inventory there, but family is forgiving with inventory if next period you can move it. So that's something yellow has. I can't say much more than that because I'd be really giving it away. But that's what you have to look at in your next period compared to what happened in this last decision. Now, eco, everybody usually crashes and burns because you've inherited inventory there. If you invest and build a lot, the demand's not there yet. It's a slow grower, but it's also a potential superstar star versus the dogs, the cows, the stars, and the question marks. The cows and the cash cows and the money that comes in our family and an image. And yet image can also be a star through most of the sim. And the reason I say most of it, you got to watch decision 4 and 5 at the bottom of your chart when it shows the gas price index. It's at $2 now. That goes up to $5, but it doesn't usually do because on the short the 5 decision compared to the 8. But if it even hits $3 to $4, image is going to get dinged a little on the profitable side because you're going to have less sales, and you got to be careful about consumption. If you raise the consumption one up, that slider up on consumption, it it makes you get better gas mileage. It's not increasing consumption; it's increasing the ability to have good consumption. It's sort of backwards, but you'll see that it's high usually in eco because that's what it's all about. That's how you engineer an eco car. So, but you got to be careful with that with the gas price index towards the end because if it goes up there, you can get in real trouble. Now, in that image, this is usually our absolute superstar, and the problem here, everybody did okay. Look at zero. Red built some inventory up, but they also, so they're not going to be like superstar in it. But you look at who's closest to a straight line of zero here. That's what you ask yourself. Who really matched supply and demand by CapEx investment? And you make your CapEx investment also by with your sliders. When you slide some of those decisions and follow that white line, the market line, and you're hitting what they want, you're also creating CapEx. You'll see what happens with the CapEx wheel, and you're doing investment that you need in your plant where you have to then change your production forecast and your number and say, I'm going to do really well here. So you look at that zero line and you say, why did blue do so well in this line, even though they kept crashed and burned at all costs? Look at the line. They're really, this is zero here, right? This is amazingly straight for a first decision, not having any idea how to balance supply and demand yet. It might be third decision by you're saying, I'm really getting this. Let's adapt. And the whole reason you get an A plus 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 in this class isn't whether you did great or crashed and burned. It's how you adapted and what you learned. And the last presentation to your board is like 5 slides that tell you what did you learn, what did you change, how did you adapt. If you can answer the question, this is how we adapted. This is what we did different because we saw where we crashed and burned, and this is where we augmented because we saw we were doing good. You got the answer because this is what our board wants to hear. They don't want to hear it's wonderful, it's great, it's miserable. They want to hear what are you doing about it? What have you done for me lately? What's happening tomorrow? And that's all about we're going to continue this adaptation, continue this change, course corrections. This is what we're doing. And it can go all the way up, of course, it's strategy. It can go all the way up to your mission, your vision. We modified this a little bit. And then that whole thing of what happened, what do I do? At the very end of the course applies to your own careers and your lives. It says, what are you doing with all this? What's your personal strategy? And, today's hot topic in hiring people is what's called high agency. What is high agency? At this recording, by tomorrow it may be different. High agency means how innovative are you? How can you work on your own? When you have a problem, how do you solve it with innovation and being a self-starter? And so that's a high degree of agency or agenthood, taken from AI. And the counter for that is low ego. This is a Christian school, and we have servant leadership, and if you have your ego's control, but you're doing great, and you have high agency as self-starter, then it's a great little mix. And that's there's a whole list of what employers are looking for today in recruiters. And high agency is the buzzword of the day. It used to be innovation, used to be leadership. But this is one that's very hot today. So anyway, so image is a great area to invest, even for decisions 2 and 3, watching the gas index. And if you're building inventory like red, what do you need to do in marketing to get the image closer to what the customers want compared to what your competitors are doing? And strategy is always about competition and seeing what the next step is, the next move is, the next position is. So there's always competition. If without didn't have competition or co-opetition, you wouldn't have strategy. If you're in a chess game, you look at the position and say, okay, how do I solve this? Which is the next best move? Well, classify the pattern first. If somebody says, oh, it's a puzzle, oh, it's a mate in one, it's like, oh, okay, now I know what it is. Oh no, it's a fork in two. No, it's a royal fork. It's a queen take in four. It's or whatever it is. When you have the category of what the problem is, then you can get to a solution a lot faster because all those moving parts aren't absolutely chaotic and unable to handle because there's too many of them. So now that we look at those two, let's take a look at our white lines to get you a snapshot you can take for, and you really need to copy these white lines and see how they change with each decision because that'll really help save you time. You won't have to spend a lot of time on your decisions because you'll say, oh, that's all we have to do is course correct and adjust that because we're really close and good on that. That way you're not reinventing literally the wheel or the gear every time. So really looking at those white lines on your own and also your competitors, and what the white lines are, of course, is just the decisions that happen with that come along with the results of every slider. So let's jump there. Let's start with red here and we'll blast through these really quickly. What I do is I give these so you can take screenshots, see what the competition doing, you see what you're doing, see how the customers are responding to it. And so I don't need to talk a lot about it, and you'll understand it right away. You have to understand that the x-axis here is not a time series. So we're not looking at progress in terms of how are we doing in each decision, right? What we're more looking at is what's going on with the white market lines compared to what decisions we need to make. So obviously these aren't like 6 decisions or 12 decisions. These are the sliders that go down this side. So this isn't the time of the decisions, but you will see those as we superimpose these for every decision. However, you got to see this is what the market wants, and it changes with every sim a little bit. But if you're actually crashing and burning somewhere, like blue is right now in low cost, the smartest thing to do isn't to make giant changes. Big changes, big prices, big investments, big thing. Big is not good. It's a year later in every sim, and a year later you can crash and burn in cash if you're not careful with making smaller decisions on the sliders, as well as especially on capex on the production side. And I'll work with you on that through the rest of this week. Questions about decision two into what should we do on production, but it's the formula that's there that says capex, adding back to depreciation and what's your forecast and what you need on inventory, or how much inventory do you need to broom and get rid of by lowering your price a little bit. But don't broom it so you destroy the whole industry. It's better to work together and say, I'll take a little bit less profit, some profit taking, but we're not all throw inventory into the market and destroy the fact that, nobody else get price, so we'll never get any rosé out of it. But so then obviously you can see that consumption here is an issue for red. Red did great, and I'm not saying anybody did really bad, but it's just the closer you can get to matching what the customers want here, and you'll see towards the end that some of these just absolutely overlay. The decisions are being made so well because you can see what's going on, what the competitors are doing with these slides, and marketing is always not a big deal because it's almost straight lined unless you're really going for something like an image. You'll see it's very different in image. Let's look at family. And we look on family red, which they did good. They did great profit. And how close are they to the white line? That's really good. For the first decision, that's really good. That means somebody did some homework and watched the videos, studied the cheat sheet, and said, this is what these customers want in this line. So hats off to the family person. Eco, nobody gets slapped on the hand for eco because it's very difficult. It's a very, very hard line to deal with, and most people don't change very much on it at all. You can see brand power per model got dropped down, but it's really hard to do anything in eco unless you're actually looking at the inventory you were given and what you're doing to do to move it. Because people just go, well, I'm gonna try to let it stay stable, but they still get kind of dinged on E because it's not earning some things, and they are selling some. So you do have to look at your budget and say, okay, what are we doing with on the value chain side of eco? Although again, the big wins are going to be in Imogen and family at the beginning. And look again, this is where the money ball is, and look how close that's being followed in terms of understanding what Image wants. So, and don't take this either as a team kind of thing saying, wow, the one that did the image card line, they did more homework than we did, and they really did great. It's That's probably true. I mean, there's an element of truth in that, but understand that it's built in that if you're trying to manage a low cost or an eco, you've got a turnaround tough situation there. So it's not on you. Just, and conversely, it's not on the real winner that there's one person that's just a superstar because you made a fortune on that. Although it is good because you can blow it by making big mistakes and not looking at what the customer wants at all, or not being conscious of what the customer is doing here. Switching to blue team, we'll start out with low cost, which is the probably the worst match to needs in low cost that we had in the sim, because a little bit of space, you almost need to be identical on this white line to do well in revenue and EBIT. And I'm not going to dwell on, we all make mistakes, and some of the ways that these were moved in low cost were very aggressive um, for a line that is not ready to be invested in without the same kind of investment in production. So you have to go back to Blue has to go back to the production and said, wow, what happened, what happened in that line with our EBIT, which got crushed, and why did we have a bunch of inventory sales and did great in marketing, but we had a whole lot of loss between orders and inventory, and also some loss in features because of CapEx. When you're not hitting this line and you're investing more than what the market wants, that's just like building more inventory than what the production can cover. You'll get a gap that destroys your EBIT. So this is one gap of not hitting those customer needs by over investing, except for in number of models, and which is really kind of fascinating because number of models is one of the hardest things to hit, and yet with the model lines and the way that this was done, backing off a little from where it was from the last decision was really smart. And you say, well, that's kind of accidental. Well, of course, it's all accidental with the first decision. You had no feedback and you've never tried this before. So there's a lot of better lucky than good going on with every one of these. But, as you move through, then we'll more quickly move family, which was not too bad, actually. There was Blue did really quite well. All three teams did. So, and you can see there's not too many gaps there. And also you have to look at LOI, of course, too. Eco-friendly, again, there was like a lot of people did nothing. They just left it the way it is. So it's staying the same way it is, but it's going to kill you if you didn't keep up the plant and production and you had inventory because it's still trying to be moved, even if you didn't change these features. Not doing sliders doesn't stop it from crashing, not as much, but all three did, because you have to look at the other factors in terms of, yes, we have inventory that we inherited that we have to move and we have to keep it going. If you are shutting it down like this, then you have to be careful to add back the depreciation, make the investment in a plant, or the inventory you have won't move, and then you'll be hit on that too. Um, Again, Blue did fantastic in image. They just did great, made good decisions. They really understand image. Nobody did really bad in it. Yellow kind of hit the wall a little bit in it, but they did really well in others, and just compensated for it. And we can look at that change, but their problem was more on LOI than it was on the matching process here. So this is really, marching a heartbeat did really well. And I haven't memorized all these, but I'm basically saying when you get to image for Blue, you'll see a nice EBIT on it between that and the LOI. So last but not least, let's take a look at the order they do this in. Let's take a look at yellow. Right, you saw the LOI and they didn't do that bad in it on low cost and also low cost, even though they had built inventory, low cost, they didn't do quite as bad in matching the needs of the market with the features. And so red and yellow both did not too bad. They still lost money, and they still did not hit their break even on EBIT, but their matching process wasn't that bad in low cost. Now, when we get to family, where everybody did really well, you saw an LOI, it wasn't as deadly, and on this, there's not that big of gaps. So this isn't following this time series. Remember, these are discrete, not continuous measures in terms of the features you're putting in on the sliders. And everybody did a really good job on that. And actually, except for yellow and image, did really good on image on LOI also. Eco, everybody kind of died in. And again, it's like, let's not fool with it too much, but we weren't really trying to match it. And it's got things other than to do with features problems in eco in terms of their growth of the portfolio. And that's a whole nother set of slides about that. Again, yellow did not do bad. I mean, nobody did really bad. They didn't do as well as blue, but there are some gaps in here where they're kind of chasing the indicator. This isn't really a leading or lagging inventory indicator because this isn't a time series. But on the other hand, it is from not the derivative, but the integral side of the calculus that it is the distance between the two, the areas between the two curves. So if you're doing advanced modeling on this stuff, you have to use integrals, not differentials, because this is not a time series when you have discrete math involved. So that is the story with those. And I will be doing more of these slides now. We're past the time frame where I want to be, but we will be going back to awesome. Okay, again, let's wrap it up. That's what we're going to look at just for the recap to give you a general idea and a lot of graphics you can take pictures of, especially the settings in your decisions. There's a whole nother set on the supply side that I could do another hour on, but the supply side, in terms of LOI, you can see what did we do where we didn't build enough to meet our inventory, or where we did great. We made them, we added to the inventory we had, we got the changes right in the inventory in terms of what the customers want. We matched the competition, but we didn't market it right. We have some issues because of having to move that inventory, not that we didn't have the inventory. So that's a whole different idea. But again, that's related to the features of the marketing that you choose and making sure you match up to the needs there, which we just saw, and the white lines. And you could look in more detail on that for your reports and your report to your board and how you adapt and what the course corrections you make and how you fix problems. And I will give you guidance, even individual Zooms, individual videos, all the rest of the week for every other thing. So keep on texting. As you know, as you've learned already, I can't give you specific advice on you have to do that and not tell everybody else. So, but I can absolutely on the production side point you to other slides, show you things that'll help you as you make these course corrections. Remember, the focus on the sim in all of your responses. If you're asked about strategy, if you're asked about value, the relate it back to the sim, and you can use the sim graphics. You can answer the discussion questions. I know there's a lot of, you can do a lot of citations from the readings and all that stuff, but that's not required. We don't have to do EPA format. And when they're saying do papers, remember you can also work as a team on this. The teams are allowed to work together, even though they're benchmark individual deliverables, unlike CLC where you're dropping the annexes and like these decisions. And also these decisions are worth a lot. Sometimes they look like they're worth zero, but this is a relay race. You get higher points later, but it's dependent on the cumulative effect of all of the standings that you've had. So, don't give up because it's a zero. Do that, do that annex and do those results because that's helping your team. But also, work with each other. You can, if you want to divide up sections of a paper or presentation, say, you take these 3 slides, these take 2, just cite your teammate instead of citing, Bandura 2011 or something. Cite the teammate. And also, you will see an exercise coming up, which will shock you and surprise you. It's saying use AI for this. You can put AI in, you can go to Claude or Grok or Gemini or GPT-5 now is out, and say at this recording, and say, hey, what's going on with the sim? What's mega learning? Blah blah blah, and it will cite all in my videos. Yeah, that comes up in all the AIs because they jumped in, and GCU is all over that, Harvard's all over that, because this partnership we have with Harvard and working this out, and our students have been doing this for many years. I mean, our course lead, Paul, is just amazing in this, in terms of how he balances this out. So, and you'll see that in the videos that he's done on Model Sim with me, our videos that we work on together. But again, work as together as a team as much as you can. um, Text me if you have any questions, as you have in the past. If I missed anything, ask me. It's all there in the videos, but I also will give you specific answers also as you go forward. So again, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Validators, hats off, thumbs up. You've done fantastic. You all validated in the right amount of time. You did great, and we'll take it from here. But you have the makings of a fantastic universe. Proud of you all. See you next time. See you in Halo.